All right, everybody. This is our second office hour for the Phase 4 project, and we're just going to go through more of questions on the doc. As usual, anytime you have questions, feel free to just shoot them at me. To start, let's just go in the order of what's on the doc. Let's start with recommendation system. I also do have this pulled up. So can you show an example of creating a feature matrix for LightFM? What format does it need to be run through the build item features function? So this is specific to LightFM. So if you're just working as Surprise, don't have to worry about this. I actually pulled up one of my examples. It is for one of the contract roles that I did, so cannot share a lot of details, but I did use LightFM. And I have a lot of stuff functionalized, but I think we can talk about what is required. So for and just as context, we are trying to build the content-based part of a hybrid recommendation system. So therefore, you're going to incorporate details about the items. In this case, my items were places. So I'm just getting place info, just FYI. So right here, you can see that in this function, that I did before putting it, this is the function I created before putting it into LightFM's dataset object for like building the item features. And I have two things here. I don't think you need all of them. I think you just need this part. So this is the format of what I feed into that method. So just so you can see, the method that we're talking about is build item features here, and this builds the place feature matrix. I have it all in a function, so there's a lot of other stuff going on here. But this is what we're talking about. So what this takes in, which is what the question on the doc was, what this takes in is, I guess, a list. In this case, it'll be a list of tuples. And in each tuple, you have the place, or in your case, like the movie, and a list of features that it has. I think in the case of the movie CSV, it works out really well because you do have a lot of, I think almost everything is categorical data. If you also have like the year, you can feed that in there. There is another thing that you can give it feature weights, but I personally haven't gotten into it. I assume you just feed in like an array of feature weights. But you can see here within this, I'm also using, here we go. So when I fit the data set, I'm also fitting in a list of the unique features. So unique features you see comes from, wait, let me just double check that it is here. Yep, the unique features are basically every possible entry here, if that makes sense. So basically what this was, actually what this data set is, this is Foursquare's data, which is sort of like a Google Maps. Each of this is a business, and these are all like their tags, and I use their tags to create the content-based part of the recommendation system. So I guess you'll need two things. One, you're going to need a list of every possible feature, or literally every category. Let me just write that down. All right. So first, you need a list of all your unique features, i.e., every possible value of your dummy variables, and also a list of tuples showing the relationship between movie and its features. So in this case, it would be, let's say movie, oh wait, a list of tuples. So it would be like movie, and then feature 1, feature 2, feature 3. And that will be a tuple. And then you'll have another tuple. Let's do movie 1, And then maybe you have feature 3, feature 4, feature 7. That's an example. Let me just put maybe 0 here. Right. So this will be what you feed into the build data set, build item features. And then you also need a list of all your unique features when you're fitting the data set object. And that goes here. I can't share this, but I can also create like a snippet and send this out to the, you know what, I'll like put it in the guidelines. I just need to like clean this up so there's no like information that I cannot share, but I'll send this out to you all. So yeah, that is what you need for building the item features. That's really just for the content-based proportion of the content-based portion of the hybrid recommender. All right, let's see what else there is. Oh, one thing that I wanted to clarify. I think I got confused with all the double negatives, so I've gotten a bunch of questions on this part. The sparsity of your utility matrix, I've gone in and edited it so it's hopefully more clear that it's the number of total ratings divided by your number of unique users multiplied by the number of unique items. So just wanted to clarify that. And if you have questions about that, feel free to ask me. All right, I saw some questions coming in with time series. Let's talk about these. So the first new question we have is, how is melting the data different from using transpose or pivot? Is there one we should use over another? This article talks about like different steps of pandas functions to get the same result. So I would say it's really up to you which you prefer. I believe one of them maintains the index, one doesn't. Again, it really depends on whether the index is important to you or not. But again, it's up to you which you prefer. I personally don't like to use melt or pivot. I mainly just like transpose, and I like to segment my data frames and put them back together. Just because I personally also find the arguments of all of these functions a little bit confusing. So yeah, as long as you find one that you prefer, feel free to use whichever one. All right, follow up to question A. And question A was doing feature engineering before plugging in your model. So if I run a function to find the best differencing parameter on a series, so the lowest p-value, would it be reasonable to just put that in as the D in the grid search instead of searching for it there too? Could that lead to overfitting, or is it just making sure my data is stationary before modeling? Just trying D values of 0 to 24 seem reasonable. So I would say it does make sense to just put that in the grid search instead of searching over your different D values. I will say D values don't tend to go very high, because if you think about it, the more you difference, the more information you're losing, because all you're doing is capturing like the change in your value from time period to time period. So because of that, usually I have not seen models that difference more than like 5 times. So trying D values of 0 to 24 seems a little bit much. It's not necessarily overfitting. It's more like, you know, you're losing information, because once you go from one differencing once, which means that, you know, your new data is literally the change in your time, the change in values over time. If you difference that, is your change in the change in values over time. And so you actually lose, you end up getting further and further from your like root information. So usually when you're doing D values in your grid search, I would say the window for values that you search over usually isn't very big. I would say plus minus 2. So let's see, would it make sense to plug in the best D value based on p-value? Not necessarily overfitting, but you do lose information when you difference. All right. So in AutoArima, usually you tune the values with a smaller window. So like plus minus, nope, not this one, plus minus 2 perhaps. Of course, this is not like the plus minus 2, it's not like a strict window, it's just what I've seen. Based on what it has seen. There we go. If you difference your data before running a model, is there a way to undifference the prediction so that you can get values you can compare to undifferenced models? Or is there a way to compare RMSE or some other metric between difference and undifferenced models? Well, if you difference your data, honestly, once or twice, the way you undifference it is you start from your first value or start at whatever value you have a value of, and you're literally adding and subtracting the difference data. So for example, if like, hold on, you just have to rolling add or subtract the difference data. So as an example, if your difference data is 1, 2, minus 1, 3, let me just put this as difference, is 1, 2, minus 1, 3, your actual, you first have to know like what your starting point is. So if you have like, you could probably take like your last, the last data point that you do have, and then just add 1. So let's say you start at 100, you know that your next one is going to be 101, 103, 102, 105. So you're just going to like add and subtract these numbers as you go. So that's how you can do that. And if you've differenced it twice, you just have to do this process twice. Yeah. All right. And then is there a way to compare RMSE or some other metric between difference and undifferenced models? Honestly, not that I'm aware of. I will admit that like my like adjacent or further knowledge of time series models that's outside of the curriculum is not as robust, I guess. So I'm not aware of any way to compare difference and undifference models outside of what is, yeah, outside of using like AIC, BIC. So other way to compare, not that is aware of. All right, what does a negative value for AIC or BIC mean? That's actually a question I don't immediately know the answer for. So let's just do a quick Google. AIC interpretation. So let's just see what we have. This is for general mixed models, but hopefully we have something that makes sense. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, absolute values of AIC scores don't matter. Scores can be negative or positive. You should not care for it. So it's literally whichever one is smaller. Let's just do a double check for time series. Time series to see if anyone has said anything about that. Let's see. I think none of these are specifically talking about time series, but AIC is used for any model. And again, it compares like the goodness of fit. So I think that, yeah. So I think that negative, there's no particular interpretation based on what I'm seeing here. There's no particular interpretation of negative AIC or BIC. It's just even better, apparently. So yeah, let me just put that here and do a TLDR. Your model is performing really well, but I probably need to like look into it more. All right. let's see what else we've got. Oh, any questions regarding either recommendation systems or time series before? I'm not sure if there's any more. I don't think so, actually, but
I have a quick
yeah.
question, sorry. With LightFM, how would you go about doing cross-validation there?
I believe LightFM does have some sort of cross-validation. Let me just take a quick look. LightFM cross-validation. So I believe it's in a very similar way as, let's see. So this is gonna split the data set. I guess it just does the chain test split. So, I mean, in this case, it's not exactly cross-validation. This is just doing the chain test split. Let's see, model evaluation. Oh yeah, I guess there is no built-in cross-validation. I mean, you could always write your own cross-validation. I would say for this project, you probably don't have to, but if I were to do cross-validation, I would randomize, let's see, or I would create data set objects for, like I would manually create my own splits, like maybe use like scikit-learn's chain test split function, make my own like subsets, and then run and test the LightFM model on that. Of course, that will have you recreating like all of the objects used for LightFM. I would say you can throw them all in a function. I know when I built my LightFM model, I did not do my I did not cross validate because what I was working on, like the results were, like the validity of the results was less important, and it was more about generating some recommendation. So yeah, that's how I would do it. I would probably use scikit's. I would use a combination of scikit's cross-validation methods, and then just recreate all of the dataset objects just to test the hyperparameters.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
I have a question for the recommendation system for running the features through. So when you say you need a list of all your unique features, does that mean like a physical list of like the names of your dummy variables, or like a data frame with all of your?
Yeah, it seems like it. So let's see. So in this case, it looks like, yeah, I literally have as, so this was one of the inputs, and this was every possible feature that could show up.
Okay.
So it could be like your column names.
Right, okay.
And then in this case, yeah, it's just, this is the place. These are all like the features where it had like a 1 as dummy variables. I will say that
Okay.
I've never had to work with like continuous data. So I'm not 100%
Right.
sure how I would feed that in. I've got to look into more of like LightFM's examples to see if they have an example using continuous data.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, because we have like all of our values that have already been like run through PCA, so they're all like continuous.
Gotcha. Okay.
Everything's
okay. If you have your information as continuous, you could potentially use you could potentially manually reweight them, but yeah, I would be surprised if LightFM didn't have like continuous. Yeah, I've got to look into it more, and I'll like post something in the channel if I do find anything. Yeah, anything else? I don't think there are any that I missed.
I have another time series question.
Oh, go ahead, Melody.
Sorry. On the differencing, so I mean, I was trying to verify stationarity, and on one of my time series, like I took a log transform, and it still wasn't stationary. So then I was differencing, and it didn't become stationary until I differenced 22 times. So that's why I was going with the 0 to 24.
I see.
If it's not stationary, what else should I be doing to make it stationary besides log transforming and differencing?
You could try log transforming twice. over differencing it more times, because log transforming has a stronger impact on the stationarity of your data. So you could try that. Honestly, if it doesn't work, it just, because time series models, I know I did talk about it explicitly, there are like this very similar assumptions as like the linear models do. So there is a chance that like, I mean, it is actually very prevalent if you were to look into like cases that people are using these traditional time series models. It doesn't predict generally very well. I would say that like as long as you've done like a good enough amount of modeling, which I think would be the fact that you're like doing grid search, means that you're like there, you could look ahead and, you know, like move on from the traditional time series models. Just because there's a lot of data that time series models are just not good for. For this project, if you just want to see like what people have done for this particular time series project, there's a lot of Medium articles written by Flatiron students outlining their results. So if you just want to see like what kind of models people are doing, and like slightly different approaches to answer the question, feel free to do that. But yeah, if you are differencing that many times, it just means that it is fairly, that just means that the pattern of the data is just not something that is consistent or predictable. It is not varying in a like with a pattern. I know that was like a non-answer, but
No, it was good.
Yeah.
It was a don't get hung up on it and move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Stephen, you were about to say something?
I was just wondering for the PCA of Sarah's problem, if it makes sense to bin the variables and if you could use that then with LightFM.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's a good workaround. Like if you, yeah, honestly, if you bin the PCA, let's say you PCA'd it down to like 20 multiplied by like however many bins, let's say you make like 5 bins for each variable, that would work as a workaround for sure. Or you could bin it some more, because I know that it actually supports a lot of columns or like a lot of unique features. Like for example, I think that this one, I had like, let's see, 200. So this is like just 200 different features.
And is it just
So yeah.
feature-ish, like restaurant type? Just had 200 different options for it, or
Yeah.
those are like if you have multiple features, like you want to do restaurant type and I don't know, like dollar signs or something.
Yeah, if I wanted to do that, that would just be added onto this list. So each thing here would have like coffee shop and then number of dollars.
Right. Okay. So that's just the. Okay, and you did it in like a dictionary?
Yeah, I forget why I did this honestly, but this was, it does take it in like, I ended up turning this into a tuple, which is why I said like a list of tuples. So this is like first one, second one.
Right.
Yeah, so like if you like created dummies for anything else, you would just like add on. So it's literally like this list is anything that had like a 1 for that row.
Right.
Excuse me, Ish, I have a question about TensorFlow. I
Yeah.
know that Keras is built on TensorFlow.
Yes.
But I can't use some documentation in TensorFlow because I used Keras. The shape of the vectors and inputs and outputs are a little bit different in these documentations.
Okay.
Is there any way that I can use Keras output with TensorFlow or no?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I've never used them together. I would be surprised if you can't. I imagine like because I know like, for example, like the actual layers themselves should structurally be the same. I imagine like what could be giving it issues is there might be like certain attributes that are different between like Keras layers and TensorFlow layers. That is causing you problems. But how are you trying to use them together? Are you trying to use, oh yeah, how are you trying to use them together?
I see in some advanced projects, they use a tool like TensorBoard to see what's going on in the middle of the layers. So when you want to use the TensorBoard, the dimensions of your vectors are different in TensorFlow and Keras.
Yeah, okay, I see. TensorBoard is really cool. I've never personally used it before, but I've seen outputs from it. So I will say the capstone projects that have used TensorBoard, I know they constructed their entire neural network using TensorFlow, unfortunately. As a workaround, I know one of the labs talks about like visualizing your intermediate layers. That kind of, I know it's not as robust as TensorBoard, but that could be like something you do instead of retraining everything in TensorFlow, which will involve learning how to use TensorFlow, which is not feasible in the next half week.
Yeah, that's my problem. Because it is doable. I can read the documentation and learn it, but I don't have enough time to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not a super necessary component of this project. So my answer is you probably won't be able to use TensorBoard with your Keras architecture. I haven't looked into this myself, so I'll also do like a quick Google and like look around to see if if there's anyone who's tried to do that. Let me just write that down. But yeah, the workaround would be to like use the visualizing intermediate layers method, where you literally just plot the heat map of like what the nodes are firing, where the nodes are firing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I know that was another like non-answer, but I'm really glad that you are all like looking into things that are like beyond the curriculum. It really like, yeah, it will set you all up for success for the capstone, because there's going to be a lot of that as well. But also like, it's like where my limits of like knowledge is at. So exciting. Anything else? Let me just scroll up and down to see if anything's been added. Cool. Yeah. Any other questions? I know a lot of you are like in the weeds of your project right now. A lot of the one-on-ones that I've had today and yesterday, you are all like already well into the modeling stage, which is great. It's a really good place to be. One like piece of advice that I've been giving some of you is that, you know, this project is meant to be more chill as we get into the capstone. Like burnout is very, very real, especially when you get closer and closer to the end. So if you all, I mean, I'm not recommending that you all do this, but if you feel yourself getting tired out and getting like mentally fatigued, it's perfectly fine to wrap up your project as long as it meets minimum requirements. And then you can start like channeling more energy into one, resting, but also preparing for the capstone. Yeah, because burnout is very, very real. And I don't want anyone to like fall behind in the capstone because of that. Yeah, anything else? Unfortunately I didn't really have anything planned for like additional material during these office hours, so they will be very driven by your questions. I know this is coming up next week, but I've also been getting a lot of like capstone related questions during the 101s. So I am working on I am in the process of putting together like a guidelines doc for the capstone that also includes information like what are the additional topics that we're going to cover, scheduling of that. So I'm just putting the finishing touches up, and I will have that out to you on Friday, just in case any of you want to start looking ahead to your capstones. Included in that doc will be like links to project planners that some students have found really helpful to just like write out all like the building blocks of your project. Also, I will send out like 10 plus examples of capstones across different topics as well, so that you all can draw inspiration from that. But yeah, the capstones are going to be very, very different per student. It really does depend on what your priorities are, what industries you want to get into, what technologies you would want to focus on. So I think one thing that some people get, I don't know, insecure or hung up over is that like you feel like your capstone is not as advanced as someone else's capstone. That is just a difference in like your priorities and what kind of jobs you're going for. There can be like very modeling light capstones that focus more on things like doing a very, very in-depth analysis of your data, and like maybe creating dashboards or front ends and stuff like that. So yeah, just some comments to prepare you all. Anything else? Going once, going twice. All right then, well, if there are no other questions, I know a lot of you are in the weeds of your project, so feel free to keep working on that. I've been getting a good amount of Slack questions, so keep those coming. That's also, yeah, that's also a good way to like quickly get an answer when I'm in between one-on-ones. So continue doing that. For any of you that want like a pre-review review of your project to just like have me take a look to see if you're on the right track, more than happy to look over like where you're at right now. What will be helpful is to send me like your GitHub repo of your project if you just want me to do like a preliminary review of, you know, the steps, or if your business case makes sense, things like that. So happy to look at that as well. But yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. If you all don't have any more questions, again, always open for questions on Slack. But if there's nothing else, I guess I'll have you all get back to working on your projects. If there's nothing else, I will see you all back here tomorrow. Keep the questions coming, put them on the doc if you think that they require like a larger discussion. I think that's definitely more, yeah, I think it's a good use of these office hours. But cool. I guess I will see you all tomorrow then. Good luck on your project. Excited to see him.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.